you have to do and put out the best work that you can put out with where you're at in your journey. I mean, I very much like purposefully leave my old Facebook lives from when I first started up online, even though they make me cringe and I'm like, my content is horrible and like I would change this and this, that, and the other. I leave them there because it's part of the journey and it's part of how much I've learned and grown and evolved as an entrepreneur and a business owner. And so I think just start before you feel like you're ready and implement in tiny chunks where you can take that action and move yourself that one step forward, where it's not like this just continuous task that you're like constantly working on, because that's super discouraging.
Hello, amazing entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs. Welcome to another episode of Business Straight Up, the business podcast for photographers and creative entrepreneurs. I want to apologize for a small hiatus. You may be able to hear it a little bit in my voice today at the time of recording. I have been very sick and I am trying to recover. So I apologize for that delay. We are going to dive into something amazingly awesome today. But before we do, I have a question for you. Think about this for just a second. How many courses, workshops, and books have you read when it comes to your business? And I'm totally raising my hand here because if you know me, you know that I am a course junkie. I absolutely love to learn and we'll go through course after course after course because soaking up the information that I need to be successful is so important to me. But how many of you have gone through those resources and then crickets? You didn't really implement the things you learned, or even worse, you did a few of the steps and then just stopped. I'm still raising my hand over here because I have done it too. We live in a culture of consumption, whether it's disposable coffee cups every morning or books that we devour and then do nothing with. We go through a ton of information and materials daily. And let's be real, there are so many companies vying for our attention that it's easy to get sucked into the information that's offered. What's next? What can I learn now? What can I focus on now? And all of this happens without us really implementing what we've learned along the way, taking steps to put the pedal to the metal, so to speak. So believe me when I say that I am not pointing fingers at you because I do it too. And I need this episode today just as much as you do. So what's the solution? How do we move from consumption overwhelm into implementation and action? Today's guest is Jamie Palmer, and we are going to go through all of that, how to break down those amazing skills that you've learned into sizable tasks so that they're easier to work through, how to let go of perfectionism and stop holding yourself back. Ouch, that one hurts me too. How to go from working in your business to working on your business. So many of my students have reasons they're not successful right now, and that list is endless. But in the end, once I sit with them and we really break it down together, so much of it boils down to us, what we are doing or not doing to hold ourselves back. This is an almost daily struggle for me and something that so many of my students struggle with as well, moving from consumption to creation. And Jamie is going to really break it down for us. So let's dive right in. Hey there, awesome people. I am Brooke Summer, and you are listening to Business Straight Up, the podcast for creative entrepreneurs to learn, connect, grow, and build the business and life that they dream of. Welcome. Let's get going and dive right in. Hello, amazing entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs. I am thrilled for today's episode with something that I know so many of my students struggle with, implementation, getting that stuff out there. And I have an amazing guest today who specializes in teaching that, working with her clients to make that happen in their business. Her name is Jamie Palmer with Outlier Marketing Group. Welcome, Jamie.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. Oh my goodness. Yay.
Perfect. I feel like this is something that so many people struggle with. We live in a world of consumption, right? We're just constantly taking everything in. So moving from that consumption into creation can be so challenging. So I'm so excited to talk about that with you. But first, I want to know your story. How did you get to where you are? What did that journey look like? And what crazy things have you learned along the way?
Oh my goodness, great question. So actually last week, September 6th was the birth date of my business. My baby of my business turned 15 years old. So it's been a crazy journey. I started my business as a senior in college, and it really was it was a crazy journey. I got to $100,000 a year really quickly, and then I stayed there for about a decade.
Wow.
And part of it was I was working locally, rather than working in the online world. And it was a real shift for me. And I went through a lot of challenges along the way. And over the past, I would say 3 to 5 years, my sole focus is really switching from working on everybody else's business to really treating my own business like my best client. And it's been a game changer. We have continually grown the business. Last year we doubled. We'll double again this year. And that mindset shift and all the fun things that kind of happen along the way that you didn't realize were challenges, but they come up as challenges. And we've learned a lot. I've spent the past 15 years working with entrepreneurs to grow their businesses. And we've worked with every type of business, like restaurants, hotels, online marketers, offline marketers, you name it, we probably worked with them.
That's amazing. Yeah. I love it. I feel like you had mentioned you got to 100,000 pretty quickly and stayed there. And I feel like that's kind of the golden egg, right? Like that's what we are all reaching for when we first get into business. And then when you get there, you kind of come back with like, okay, now what?
Yes, that totally does happen. I think for me, I was really young when I started my business. And so I constantly got this objection around, oh, well, you're so young. Like, how do you know more about business than me? And it's not that I knew more about business, but I did know more about the technology. So Rhode Island's a really small state, and many of the people here are pretty old school, especially back then when, the online world was really just emerging. And so, I got stuck there for a while. And I think what happens once you get to that $100,000 mark, you're for most people, they're kind of like fully booked, right? Yes. So you're fully booked and you can't figure out how to get out of this rat race or this hamster wheel of constantly like, I got to deliver to my clients what I promised on, but I want to grow the business. And that was it was a huge issue for me. And we were helping so many clients grow like their businesses through social media and all of this stuff, but we couldn't like help ourselves to save the world,
Yes. Yes. And I love what you said about trying to deliver for your clients, but also trying to grow. And so many people, I feel like, have this mindset of growth is greedy or growth, wanting more money is greedy. But the reality is that when you grow, you can impact more people and change the world in whatever your passion is or whatever you believe in.
Yeah, I would agree completely. I tell many of my clients to look at and set goals around based on the impact that they want to make. So if they're, work backwards into your financial goal. So if your financial goal is say $10,000 a month, then you say, all right, well, I got to get 10 people into this program because so many money has this perception that it's a dirty word, right? Like,
yes,
we're greedy if we want to have a $50,000 month, but in the reality is you're not greedy. You just want to serve more people and you just literally can't help yourself.
Yes, especially when you love what you do and you know that you are impacting people in a positive way.
Yes, agreed.
Definitely. So I want to kind of skip back for a sec when you said that you started treating your business like your own client. I think that's really interesting. So many of us when we first start in our business, we are working in our business instead of on our business.
Yes.
So what does that look like for you, and how did that change kind of set you up for bigger and better things?
Yeah, great question. I think for me, one of the things that we did is I just got really intentional about where I was spending my time. And I realized that if I got smarter about how I was doing things, like if I didn't keep email open all day and I wasn't Facebook all the time and whatever, I actually had like 3 or 4 hours in the week additional that were kind of like being wasted. So once I got a handle on my time, I then reallocated that time to working on my business. So whatever that initiative was. So I started treating my business like I would with my clients. We started scheduling social media out for 30 days at a time. We started doing Facebook ads. We created initiatives about launching the podcast that we have. And we started doing like all of these things that we would do for clients. So it really made this huge shift for me. And I immediately started to see traction because people wanted to hear the things that we had to say. And I would do a Facebook Live and we would get 3 or 4 people who were interested in what we were doing, right? And the payoff was immediate, but it was definitely a challenging shift because you think like, I got to hustle. I don't have the time to do this. But if you're going to grow a team and you're going to grow a business, ultimately you have to make the time, because that's really how you take that shift from, being yourself and an assistant at $100K a year to, a team and $500K a year,
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I think that it's a huge mindset shift in changing from being an employee, which a lot of us start in the corporate world as an employee, to being the CEO and how to think differently and behave differently and to outsource where necessary. And it's just a complete mindset shift.
Yeah, agreed completely. Well, and I think too, nobody really talks about nobody talks about like what it means when you actually become an entrepreneur. Like nobody is like, all right, here's your manual. You've become an entrepreneur now. Here's your handbook for all the things you're going to have to do. And I think for many people that I've worked with and speak with, they don't realize like your HR, your sales, your marketing, your customer service, you're the delivery person, you're everything. And it's like you start this because you're passionate about something, but then you realize like you also have to do all of this other stuff until you can make enough money to really just be relentlessly focused on your passion. And I think that that's a common misconception when you start a business, that you're going to be able to spend 40 hours a week doing what you love. And it's like, well, you might be able to spend 10 or 20, but to get to that next level, you really kind of have to figure out how you're going to do all the things that need to get done.
Yes. And it's so overwhelming sometimes because we go into business to do what we love to do, and it just doesn't work that way until you put in the systems and the things that you need to have so that you can refocus.
Yep. Agree completely.
Definitely. So tell me, I love on your website that you have your 6 core values that you live by and operate your business. What are those 6 core values? And tell me a little bit about how you came up with those.
Yeah. So I actually, the core values, I did a lot of, I read a lot, I study a lot. I am sort of a geek that way. And part of that comes from those core values actually come from, it's not something I came up with. It's from Zappos. So Zappos has a book that they do every year where they call Delivering Happiness, because their whole philosophy is really like delighting the customer. And so they were really the inspiration for our core values. And some of these, the 6 core values that we live by are mindset, challenging yourself and challenging the status quo, delighting and making sure customers are happy and bringing delight and joy to everything that you do in the world, passion to come to work every day and be passionate about what you do, growth, always be learning, growing, and just becoming the best possible version of yourself. And then, of course, since my company is called Outlier Marketing Group, being an outlier. And for many people, they think like, outlier is just a statistic, and it's actually like a choice to be an outlier. You can choose to really change the world if you want to. It's a choice. And so, yeah, those are our core values that we live by. Many of our clients kind of embrace many of those mottos in their own lives as well. And so, yeah, I came up with those after reading the book Delivering Happiness, which is talks about the Zappos culture. And I think that that's really important to have values that you embody in your brand and your business.
Absolutely. I just heard, and I always get Zappos and Amazon mixed up, so I can't remember which company it is, but the head of one of those companies actually puts his annual meeting notes online for people to read.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah, it does.
You know what I'm talking about?
I do. Well, Amazon actually bought Zappos.
Okay. There we go.
And it's Tony Helsch. I forget how to say his name, but he's super transparent about everything that they do there. So yeah, he totally does. You can actually they have a culture book. It's really cool. If you Google it, like Zappos culture book, they'll send you a copy of it. And it's got literally notes from every person that works in the company about how awesome it is to work there.
Wow. That's huge for your employees to be happy, like not just your clients, but for your employees to be happy. That's huge.
Yeah, it's so huge, especially if like you're in a small company and you don't have a big team.
Yes. Well, and there's so much to be learned from things like that. Like that's a free resource. Having those meeting notes is online is absolutely free. And you can learn so much from reading things like that and from these companies to do inspire change. Like Amazon has truly changed the way that stores operate because they don't give you hell when you want to return something, like little things like that.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny. I went into Ulta the other day and I had like this face thing that I wanted to buy, and Sephora was like, oh, you got to get to $50, before you get free shipping. And it was like $28. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'll just run to Ulta and grab it because it's right there. And I go into Ulta and Ulta doesn't have it. And I'm like, oh, fine, I'll just buy it online. And it's funny because I'm like, I don't even know why I go in stores anymore, because that's kind of like always what happens. And I feel like, as a busy entrepreneur, I know for me, like my time is so valuable and I don't want to like waste it with searching through a store and doing this. And you're so spot on to say that Amazon has completely changed the game in the way in which we shop and like the way in which we have this expectation that, oh, we're going to get a package in 2 days, right? And,
yes.
If it takes longer than 2 days. And I think that there's something to be said to that for like the client experience when it comes to, and there's a lot of learning that can happen there for entrepreneurs. Like, how can you take some of those principles from Amazon and really apply them into your own business, right?
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's huge. I hate going to a store only to find out that what I want isn't there. Like, what's the point?
Exactly. So frustrating.
Oh my gosh. So one of your core values is growth.
Yes.
And I know that for me personally, you said you kind of geek out. I do too. I'm constantly reading, but there is no finish line when it comes to growing myself and learning. And I know that the day that I stop learning is the day that I leave this world.
Yeah.
And because of that, I'm kind of a course junkie. I love to learn. I can tell you, I can give you honest reviews on so many of the big courses, and I soak in the knowledge and awesome content that so many others have to share. But there comes a time to stop learning and start implementing. Yeah. So what does that look like for you to begin implementing what you learn?
Yeah, great question. I think for me to determine when it's time, I think learning is a continual process, and you have to embrace that as a mindset that you can always make something better and you can always improve upon something. You can always make it better, right?
Yes.
And there comes a time, though, where you can learn and learn and learn, and without the practical application of doing and implementing, you're never actually going to be able to figure out what's going to work for you. And so I say that sooner, the faster, the more that you implement, the faster that you can learn and actually grow more. Because you're constantly in that mode where you are just learning and not implementing, well, you can't actually see how that applies to you in your business. So I'm a big believer in don't try and take on 300 tasks, don't try to take 300 things that you've learned, or don't try and, launch a 12-week course in 2 days, right? Like, don't write all the content for that. But I'm a huge fan of start implementing before you're ready and break down what you're trying to implement into manageable tasks that you can finish in an hour or two or in one sitting. Because what will often happen is people will try and take on a task that is much larger than 2 or 3 hours. And anything that's more than an hour or two, even 3 hours is hard sometimes. If you can't complete a task in that amount of time, you are going to feel discouraged because you're like, oh man, I didn't get this done. I still have to do blah, 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 blah. But when you do complete something, it's like you get that adrenaline rush. You get that cortisol shot to your brain where you're like, yes, like I got this done and now I can move on to the next thing. So always continue to learn, but start before you're ready. And I think the biggest thing is, and you have to do and put out the best work that you can put out with where you're at in your journey. I mean, I very much purposefully leave my old Facebook lives from when I first started up online, even though they make me cringe. And I'm like, my content is horrible. And I would change this and this, that, and the other. I leave them there because it's part of the journey. And it's part of how much I've learned and grown and evolved as an entrepreneur and a business owner. And so I think just start before you feel like you're ready and implement in tiny chunks where you can take that action and move yourself that one step forward, where it's not like this just continuous task that you're constantly working on, because that's super discouraging.
Absolutely. One of my coaches, mentors, I never know what to call people. He constantly tells me 70% perfect is success, 100% perfect is failure. Because in our own minds, getting to that 100% perfect is so not going to happen in most cases. Okay. There will always be something to tweak. And so if you wait to put something out there until it's 100% perfect, you have now lost a year of business and life.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed completely. Yeah. And
that is huge.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I just said that's huge.
It's so huge. And I think I see so many, especially newer entrepreneurs or people who are coming from, say, the corporate world. And some people might not agree with this, but everyone's always like, oh, I have to get my brand perfect and my website perfect and all of this stuff perfect. And the fact of the matter is, as you put yourself out there and you learn more about who your ideal client is and who you are as an entrepreneur, a business is a living, breathing thing. And the more you put yourself out there, the more you're going to go back and you're going to look at that website and be like, oh man, I want to change all of these things, because it's slightly different now than it is from 6 months ago. And I think people have this perception that I have to have this perfect website and this perfect brand and this perfect everything before I can get started. And I mean, the fact of the matter is, I started my business. It was originally a website business, and I sold websites, and we didn't have a website for 3 years. You don't need to have all of that stuff in place to move forward. You just have to continually take progress forward and take steps forward and show up and deliver value consistently.
Yes, absolutely. I could not agree more. I feel like we get stuck in this, but I want it to be just right. And that doesn't serve anyone. It doesn't serve your clients. It doesn't serve you. It doesn't serve the world. So let it go. Yeah. Let go of the perfection. And how often do we focus on something and say, oh, it's just not right yet, when it's something that our clients won't even see?
Right. And I mean, and in full transparency, some of my biggest learnings have come when I put something out there that I thought was perfect. I hemmed and hawed over it, right? And I'd have a client come to me and be like, oh, Jane, but, and you're like, oh my goodness, I never even saw that. Right? And to me, I'm like, why did I struggle and hem and haw over this for months? I would hold myself back for months and not move forward because I would be so stuck on this one thing being perfect. And you'd put it out there and a client would be like, oh, you totally missed these other things that you do. And you're like, yeah, that's because I was obsessing.
Oh my gosh. It's so true. I work with a lot of photographers. I teach a lot of photographers, and so many of them just obsess over a stray hair in a photo, like, I promise you, your client will not care. And if she does, she will ask you and you can fix it. Stop spending hours on this.
Yeah, right? It's so true. They don't even notice.
No, they don't. Oh my gosh, so true. So let's talk about content marketing. What exactly is it? Why is it still important and relevant?
Oh, great question. So content marketing at its core is really just teaching and educating, right? So I'm a big fan of understand who your ideal client is and who you're talking to, right? That's the most important piece of getting started with content marketing. And then the second part of that is really being able to identify what it is you're teaching and where that person is in their journey. I always like to kind of look at a client journey from to make it super simple. It's like, all right, so when your ideal client meets you on Facebook Live for the first time, they are at a kindergarten level. And what are all the steps that need to happen to get them educated to that high school level where they're ready to hire you? And that's where the content marketing comes into play, whether that's done through text or blogs or emails or Facebook Lives or YouTube videos or whatever that is. It's really being able to deliver content that is value driven, that helps your client move from where they are to where they want to be with every piece of content.
Absolutely. It is so important. So many people think that it's just enough to show pretty pictures, to show evidence of your work. But the reality is that know, like, and trust factor is huge.
Yes, it's a game changer. And and as I shared earlier, I doubled the business last year. And one of the things that I made a commitment to, besides treating my business like my own best client, was that I was going to show up consistently every single day and deliver value to my audience. And it literally changed the game when it came to my business.
Yes.
We doubled, and all we did was show up and do Facebook Lives and really just give the audience exactly what they wanted.
Yes. And you let go of the perfection of maybe my hair doesn't look exactly the way I want it to look. Or, yes. Huge. So I know that this is a really broad question and every industry is different, but based on your experience in your own business and with your clients, what is the best format for content to be most effective? Is it video, blog, social media?
Yeah, great question. I think it doesn't matter to me. I think there are trends, right? It doesn't matter what's trending right now is video, right? That might change in 6 to 8 months. I think audio is going to become more popular. I'm sure I'm not going to say the name of it because I have one in the room and it will talk. But the Amazon devices, I think, are going to become more prominent, and audio and podcasts are going to become more prominent. But I think the thing to remember is those are trends. Regardless of what the trend is, like Instagram stories are really popular. Whatever the trend is, you still have to figure out how you're going to deliver value. It's just about getting creative with whatever that platform is. Because as an example, Instagram stories, it's a lot harder to show value in a 30-second clip than it is on a 20-minute Facebook Live or a 30-minute YouTube video. So I wouldn't say that there's any one particular way that converts better than others. I also think it depends on what your audience wants. Like my audience loves the audios and podcasts because they consume content on the go. And then they love the videos that we do on Facebook. So I think figure out what your audience wants and just continue to give them more of that, but then be willing to also adapt to whatever the trends are that are going on and be able to get creative. And I think one of the most important things to understand is that, and nobody really talks about this, I talk about it all the time because it's something that we do in my business, but have a content workflow in place, right? As a business owner, you're busy. You don't have time to write micro social media content each and every day. So figure out a process for how you're going to create one macro piece of content. So something that's 10, 12, 15 minutes long, where you can go and you can get that transcribed, right? And you can have your VA or your assistant pull quotes from it and pull content from it and leverage that one really awesome piece of content that you've made and distribute it everywhere, rather than trying to always constantly be on this hamster wheel of, I got to make another social media post today, and I've got to make another social media post today.
Yes. And let's talk about kind of in that same idea of repurposing your old content that's still relevant.
Yeah.
That is something that so many people don't do. They're like, but I wrote that years ago. Well, is the information still correct and relevant? Does it still apply? Yes. Then share the hell out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and if you look at like the Brendan Burchards of the world and the Gary V's and all the really big names in the online industry, they repurpose content all the time. And the thing is, we're so busy and there's so much noise. It takes us between 5 and 7 touches for stuff to even sink in. So the fact of the matter is, if you spend, 30 minutes prepping for a Facebook Live or a video, and then you deliver really awesome content, right? And that Facebook Live is 15 minutes long and you go get that transcribed, that's 5 to 7 pages of written content.
Yes.
Well, that's so much content when you think about it from a social media perspective. And a lot of people don't think of it that way. But that's really, we made a content workflow in my business and it was a game changer, right? Like it saved me so much time and so much energy around feeling like I always had to create.
Yes. It is so relieving. I don't know that feels like a weird word, but it just takes such a weight off of you when you realize that you don't have to constantly create new content. You can repurpose the old.
Yeah, it's so awesome.
Yes. So how does someone keep from being completely overwhelmed with all of the options that we have when it comes to this content and value, as well as the technology that comes along with it?
Yeah, great question. Again, man, you're good with the questions. Yeah, I think if you're in the rat race or you're on the hamster wheel where you're doing social media in real time, which I feel like happens a lot, then I'm going to give you permission to stop posting for at least 1 week to get organized. And what I would do is I would post about the fact that you're not going to post for a week. And then I would use that time to create 3 or 4 videos where you could start to implement a process like this, where you go, you get them transcribed. Like Temmie's an awesome tool. It's 10 cents a minute to get your videos transcribed. They do a pretty decent job. You're gonna, if you have an accent or something like that, it will definitely pick up on some of that. But for the most part, it's super easy to work from that. And then I would say if you can hire somebody or have an assistant or someone or even an intern come in and help you pull content from that, go ahead and do that and get 2, 3, 4 weeks worth of content created from those videos that you've made so that you're ahead. Now, when it comes to the technology aspect, I mean, I'm a huge fan, like, hey, if you're creating this content, try and distribute it everywhere. But if you're feeling overwhelmed, pick 2 platforms where your ideal client is hanging out and do those 2 platforms ridiculously well.
Yes. Absolutely. So many people want to be everywhere. And I get that, it's a new shiny toy, shiny object syndrome. But if your ideal client isn't there, why are you putting in that effort?
It's so true. And I mean, there are so many platforms and so many trends and so many this and that and the other. Like for me, like I'm like, oh, Instagram stories are converting so well for so many of my clients, but it just doesn't come naturally to use that platform. And I have like such a hard time trying to keep my story lit up. And I'm at this point where it's like, this doesn't work for me. Right. And if it's not working for you, right, and you can't be consistent with it, don't do it, because that's also a signal to the person on the other side saying, hey, I can't be consistent with this. So that's not a good start of a relationship either.
Definitely. I am not good with Instagram stories. I just don't get it. I've been on technology a lot longer than most people have. So it's not a tech piece. It just doesn't seem important to me. I don't understand. So I gave it up. And a lot of people say, that's where it's at. That's where you got to be. And I just don't agree. And I'm still fine. So it's all good.
It's a trend. It too shall pass. I mean, I remember the days, and I'm sure you probably do too, where everyone's like, oh, you're going to get a Facebook page. You're going to have so much reach on your Facebook page and yada. And it was like the wild, wild west. And then ads came out and it was even like more wild, wild west. And now that's all kind of subsided and changed. I mean, it's like I said, it's trends. Creating content and delivering value to your prospects is not going to change, right? And that's really what being a marketer and an online business owner in 2018 and beyond means, right? Because you're always going to have new platforms. It's just a matter of how you're conveying that message.
To be adaptable.
Yeah, totally.
To learn new things, but to be okay with saying, you know what, that doesn't fit my business, and that's okay.
Yeah, and like I said, if Instagram stories don't work for you, just don't do them, right? And that's the thing. You don't need, I'm happy to give people permission, right?
Right.
Like you don't need permission, like you are your own boss. So you don't need somebody's permission to be like, hey, Facebook Lives don't work for me. And if they don't work for you, then they don't work for you. Don't force it.
Yes, your business, your rules.
Yep.
For sure.
Yep.
So let's talk about reactive versus proactive, because this is something that I work on a lot with my students. Marketing requires consistency.
Yep.
And I struggle with this as well. So many of us get caught in the rut of market. And then we're so busy, so we don't do any marketing. And then things die off. And so then we market. And it's this crappy cycle of like crazy marketing, crazy busy, slow.
Yes.
What are the benefits of marketing consistently, and how can someone get out of that cycle?
Yeah, great question again. I would say that you step one is to do a time study. Do a time study and figure out what you're doing that's strategic and what you're doing that's tactical. Anything that you're doing that's tactical, find either an intern or assistant that can help you with that. And you don't need to hire them full time. Like you can get a great VA for 5-10 hours a week to offload some of those more tactical things for you, because that will help you avoid this cycle of up and down. And the other thing that you can do is like be a ninja about time blocking, right? So I love the Best Self Planner, and it's a handwritten planner, and I plan my day, and it forces me to pick like what are the top 3 priorities for the day. But it also forces me to look at my time, so I can say, hey, I've got 3 free hours today. What are the things that I can work on that are going to move my business forward? And part of avoiding that cycle is when you have growth, it's sustaining that growth. So when you do have that upswing in clients, it's consistently being able to say, okay, I just had this growth, right? I can see it in my numbers. I'm tracking my numbers. I know that this was my biggest month ever. And then continuously just saying, okay, I'm going to go right back into marketing, right? Yeah. I taught at a sales training firm for a while, which was all about storytelling, selling. And one of the mantras that we used to have was like, the best time to close a deal is when you just closed a deal. And the faster that you can just go right back to like, hey, I had a great month. I did lots of selling. I closed lots of deals. As soon as you experience that excitement, go right back into it. Because oftentimes people are like, oh, I had a great month. I'm just going to settle in. I'm just going to chill for a bit. And then they fall out of their habits of showing up and doing the marketing and showing up and working on their business and showing up and doing all of those little things that got them to that point. And then you have to go through that whole cycle of getting yourself back into that habit again.
Yes. And a huge part of that too is making it manageable. If you're constantly working on marketing 7 days a week, then of course you can't maintain that when you have a full client roster. Right. So making it manageable, setting up the workflow, setting up the systems and having those in place is huge.
Yeah, agreed. And I think that's something that we often think like, oh, I'll get to that when my business is bigger.
Yes.
But actually, like, as soon as you know with great specificity who your ideal client is, and of course it can change and adjust and stuff, but the sooner you have a really good grasp on that, the sooner that I recommend putting like a lead generation system in place and putting a nurture sequence in place for your email marketing and putting in those checks and balances and systems where you can streamline how a client comes to you. I think the faster, and like for me, as I shared at the beginning of this podcast, like I was totally stunted for 10 years and couldn't figure out how to get out of that cycle. And if I had just took a step back and gave myself the advice that I was giving to the people I was working with, that I would have been out of that position in 6 months. And when I did step back and look at like the fact that I wasn't doing anything to automate my own lead generation or streamline it or create any sort of systems in my business, I was like, oh my goodness. And it just clicked, and we got those processes in place. But I think that's something everybody thinks, oh, I'll do that when I'm bigger. And it's, oftentimes it needs to be done sooner rather than later.
Oh my gosh, I have been through that with my students. I agree completely. I put into place certain systems when, quite frankly, I was worried about how I was going to afford them. Because I wasn't there yet, but I knew how important they were. And now that I can definitely afford them, business is coming in, I thank goodness, thank God, whatever you believe in, that I have those systems in place.
Yeah. Well, and I'm a huge fan of Jen Sincero's book, You Are a Badass at Making Money. And
yeah.
I had the opportunity to see her speak. She came here to Providence, Rhode Island. And one of the things that she said when she was here is that you should, if you're stuck in business or you want to just kind of continually grow, use fear as a compass to can tell you where you need to be working in your business. And I have continually followed that fear compass, I would say, for the last year plus, and it has only led me to good things. And I think sometimes when we grow an entrepreneurial venture, we have to kind of have that faith and lean into, I'm not exactly sure I'm going to be able to pay for all of this stuff. And disclaimer, I'm not saying don't go spend $30,000, but, but sometimes we have to lean into those places where we know we need support and we know we need a system or we know we need that tool to help us get to that next level and just make that commitment to ourselves. Because the more belief and confidence that you have around that stuff, the faster that money is going to come back to you anyway.
Absolutely. And just to be clear, when you say to use your fear compass, you mean go towards the fear, not away from it, right?
Oh, yeah. Go straight towards that fear.
Yep. I actually run a business book club and we did You Are a Badass. And I got this little button here. So I'm just going to play it real quick.
You create your reality.
It has like 5 different sayings.
Feed fear a suck-it sandwich.
And it's just this little button that says badass. I completely agree. That book is amazing. I haven't read the Making Money one yet, but we did do You Are a Badass. And man, some of the things that scare you the most are the things that will change your business and your life for the better in huge ways.
Yeah, agreed. And I highly recommend actually just listening to her book. I'm a huge audiobook fan. Her delivery is fantastic.
Yes, absolutely. I want to kind of swing into, we were talking about planning and calendars, and you had mentioned the best self planner. I love Daniel Laporte's planner. Yeah. I would imagine they're probably very similar. You recently did a podcast episode about marketing ninja tips and organization and marketing. Yeah. And I've worked with so many of my students to create a content and editorial calendar because having that organization helps so much when it comes to overwhelm and that overwhelm that can be paralyzing. Yes. So we're coming up on October, and I personally work on my business and actually personally in my personal life as well in 90-day chunks. Yes. So what are your top tips to move into the fourth quarter organized, excited, ready to kick ass instead of overwhelmed and stuck?
Yeah, great question. I absolutely believe that you should set one goal that you know you can crush. I think all too often people will set a huge goal and it's like not attainable by like even Superman couldn't get this goal at this point in time. And I think so. I would say focus on one goal that you know you can accomplish, and then take that goal and break it down into manageable steps that you can accomplish each week. And then every single day, work towards chipping away at that goal. So you're just going to continually take the goal. I'm not even a fan of making it a monetary goal. Make it an impact goal. So if you've got a course or you want to get to a certain number of bookings, whatever that might be, set the number of people that you want to impact, right? So, as an example, if I wanted to put 25 people into my group coaching program before the end of the year, I would then say, okay, what are all the initiatives that I need to take to make that happen? I need to book more podcast guests. I need to do, increase my my ad spend on Facebook and whatever all of those steps are. So that is step one that I would take, which I know it's kind of like a larger step, but you can sit down in an hour if you close all of your distractions and determine what that goal is and the steps that you need to take. And then every day you just have to look at that goal and say, what can I do today to move me closer to that? And then every time that you are questioning something or you have a decision to make, you have to just ask yourself, is this in alignment with my goal? And you just need to be relentless and put your blinders on in pursuit of accomplishing that. And every day, whether you feel like it or not, you're going to show up and work towards it,
Yes, definitely. And one thing that I know I get stuck with is I have a goal and I get all these other ideas and I'm like, this is amazing. I have to do this right now. And it's very hard to stick with your goal and say, it's okay not to do that right now. In 90 days, we can pivot and look and see if that feeds where we want to go. But right now we're focusing here.
Yeah, I say put it in the parking lot.
Exactly. Yes, I have a parking lot on my whiteboard full of Post-its.
Put it in the parking lot. Yeah, and stay relentlessly focused on that goal. Because here's the other thing that happens as you start to grow your business, right? And if your goal is to get to $1 million or $2 million a year, you want to center your efforts around one program and one initiative and one avatar. And then what will happen is you'll experience a trickle down effect into your other programs and services. Because your first offering is so good, people will naturally sign up for the other offerings that you have. And oftentimes everyone's like, oh man, I got to move all these projects forward. It's like, no, focus on just that one that will impact all the other ones.
Yes. Well, and dividing your attention is so difficult. When I first started as a photographer, I had 2 separate websites, 2 separate social medias for 2 different projects, 2 different niches. And I was running around like a crazy person. It was so hard to do. Yeah. And other people do it very well. But man, I really love to focus and get shit done.
Yeah. Well, then I think, as much as we like to think that we can do multiple things well, you can't. You're not going to. It's really challenging. And while some people can do it and do it well, the majority of us, it's hard to divide your efforts like that. And then you're kind of showing up half-assedly, if you will, on all fronts that you're doing. And so I would say get super organized, map everything down, write it down. I mean, it's great to use a computer to do some of those things, but like when you sit down and you put pen to paper, you're making a commitment to yourself.
Absolutely. And a lot of us will follow through on commitments to other people, but not ourselves.
Yeah.
Which is kind of crappy to treat ourselves that way.
Yes, it is.
Oh my gosh. I love this. I I feel like there are so many people that are very overwhelmed when it comes to thinking of marketing and goals and what they want to do. And really, it just comes down to breaking it down and making it manageable so that it doesn't freak you out.
Yeah, yep, that's it. and I love how you said you look at your life, your personal life and your business life at like 90 days at a time, because really, I mean, ultimately, you don't know what's going to happen. And the best, like, yeah, sure. Try and do your yearly planning and your projections, right? But like, you could have a quarter where you totally crush this one product that you're working on, and you're like, no, I just want to double down and make this product the best possible product that it possibly can be. And I think that when we start to get ahead of that, you know, in 6 months, I'm going to do whatever, you know, it's like you're living in the future, right? Rather than living in the present and really focusing on that impact right now that you can make.
Yes. And it kind of, so I love the 90 days because it also gives you a chance to try something new without spending a year on it, without spending a crazy amount of time. Maybe I decide tomorrow I want to do Instagram stories. So maybe that's my focus for 90 days. See if it works, see if it doesn't. And then you have that flexibility to pivot and change things up.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed completely.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much, Jamie, for being here today. I think that this is like crazy valuable information for so many people. And I cannot wait to see more of what you have to offer. Where can our listeners find you? What do you want them to know about you?
Yeah, so you can find us on outliermarketinggroup.com, our website. You can also go and check out, I have a training that I've created. It's a training and some blueprints and some organizational papers around how to create 2 weeks worth of social media content in under 30 minutes. And you can get that at omggrow.com. And it's this really awesome training that I've done. And it's really kind of helps you get the foundation in place for streamlining your social media.
That's amazing. I know that there's so many people that struggle with that. We've done some episodes on that, and it can be so overwhelming at times, and you just kind of want to say, well, I'm not doing anything because it's overwhelming.
That happens.
Oh my gosh, I am one of those. I am overwhelmed. Okay, nothing.
Yep, I've been guilty of that.
Oh. Well, thank you so much for being here. I think that this is such valuable information. All of the show notes, including the planners that we've talked about, all of the books, everything that we've just talked about, because I have a full page of notes. All of this information will be accessible at the show notes at www.businessstraightedup.com/podcast. You can also go, the big long address is www.businessstraighteduppodcast.com, but it will be accessible in either place. And as always, if you love this episode, will you do me a huge favor? Go on over to iTunes as soon as we're done and leave a review. Those reviews mean so much to me, and it helps me know what I can do to serve you and add value for you so that you can grow your business in the way that you want, because it's your business, your rules, and I want to help you get to where you want to be. Thank you so much, Jamie. I really appreciate having you. And as always, if you have any questions or need anything, join the Facebook group at www.businessstraightup.com/community, and I will talk with you soon. Have an amazing day. Thank you so much for listening to Business Straight Up. I'm so glad that you could join us today. Check out the show notes for this and all of the episodes at businessstraightuppodcast.com. And I can't wait to talk with you again. Have a great day.